when whistleblowers in the government or when watchdogs inside the government simply do their job, too often it seems as though they can't, because the rest of the government, which is all powerful, can come down and influence what they're trying to do.
Up next, Sharyl Attkisson talks about her debut story for the Daily Signal on premature babies, a federal agency, and accusations of unethical human experimentation.
I think this is hugely important in terms of the idea that research is conducted by prestigious organizations and approved by the federal government, and yet was found to have violated the government's own ethics rules for consent. I think that's a big moment in the research world, and it's triggered this sort of re-examination of what human test research subjects are told. Think about the idea that if you're a parent and medical personnel, as these parents say, come to you and say, we'd like to put your baby in a study, it'll help future babies, there's basically no risk or no harm. They're not told that the babies could be put at increased risk of death, and some were. They're not told that babies could be put at increased risk of blindness. What parent would have put their baby in a study like this if they had been told the truth? They're not told that these oxygen monitors to be used on the babies in the study were intentionally rigged so that they wouldn't give accurate readings. I think these are pretty stunning things for the researchers to be after the fact defending. Now, in their defense, the researchers certainly weren't trying to harm babies. They were looking at the greater good and doing research that would help future preemies.
So does the issue come down to whether mothers and fathers had the necessary information before they were signing on to participate in the study?
I think that's part of it. Also, what should test research subjects be told? Researchers argue if you tell them too much about every little possible conceivable risk, people won't want to be in studies, and therefore the greater good can't be served. Research is incredibly important. But you ask the individual parents, and I interviewed 4 or 5 of them, they said that they have the right, and many ethicists agree, to know all the risks so that they can decide what's best for their individual baby. There are competing interests, which I thought was quite interesting, that an individual doctor for a baby is obligated to do what's right for that individual patient. Researchers are not. Researchers are not obligated to do what's best for the individual test subject. That information is something that parents and members of the public typically don't have, but should probably know. Another really important issue that's raised is when the government's own ethics body found that the government had violated consent rules, this incredible pressure came to bear on the ethics body to basically back off of its enforcement action and back down on what it had found. And this goes to a larger issue of when whistleblowers in the government or when watchdogs inside the government simply do their job, too often it seems as though they can't, because the rest of the government, which is all powerful, can come down and influence what they're trying to do. They're supposed to be an independent body that can investigate this sort of thing and make their findings without interference. But in this case, it's alleged that senior officials at Health and Human Services interfered and the National Institutes of Health to try to tamp down this ethics investigation after the findings.
So what surprised you most in investigating and reporting on this story?
I think one of the most surprising things was when I learned that the researchers, as part of the research, had intentionally worked to disable the oxygen monitors so that they would give basically false readings, so that the medical personnel wouldn't know if the babies needed to be adjusted into a better oxygen range based on the individual baby's health. These premature babies are critically ill. They're born so early, so by their very nature, they're extremely fragile. The parents are in a state of sometimes near panic because they've come in usually for emergency cesarean sections. Many of these women are single. These papers, as they described it, are sometimes sort of shoved in their face. They're asked to sign them by medical personnel who assure them it's the best thing for their baby. And quite frankly, even if the consent forms had said all of the things that the ethics office says they should have said, these women didn't read them. They were relying on the medical personnel whom they trusted to tell them what the study was about and that it was a good study.
Next on the Daily Signal, more on this story and Sharyl Attkisson's take on government responsibility.